Hi Year 8, happy World Book Day. Today I am going to read you an extract from a book called Moonrise by the author Sarah Crossan. Some of you might already have read some of her books. She's written a book called One and another one called Apple and Rain. She always writes in verse, so it looks like that, like poetry. They're all really gripping books. She's a really exciting writer. I'm going to read you an extract from it, and you need to listen really carefully because there'll be some quiz questions afterwards. And first of all, I'll start with the blurb on the back. Joe hasn't seen his brother for 10 years, and it's for the most brutal of reasons. Ed is on death row, but now Ed's execution date has been set, and this might be the last summer they have together. The first call. The green phone on the wall in the hall hardly ever rang. Anyone who wanted to speak to Mom called her cell. Same with Angela. I listened to the jangle for a few seconds before picking it up. Hello? Joe? It was Ed. He hadn't been in touch for weeks. I'd started to worry, wondered if he was ever coming home. Is Angela there? He asked. He was breathing fast, as though someone were chasing him. In the background, hard voices, a door slamming. Angela's at soccer practice, I said. And Mom? No idea. Hey, Ed, I found a baseball glove at the park. Will you be back soon to play? Ed sighed heavily. I dunno, Joe. Oh. I picked at some peeling paint on the wall. Another sigh from my big brother. I got arrested, Joe. They think I'd done something real bad. I pressed the receiver tight against my ear. What do they think you done? They think I hurt someone, but I didn't. You hear? Yeah. I mean it. You hear me? 'Cause people are going to be telling you all kinds of lies. I need you to know the truth. The front door opened and Mom stormed in, carrying a bag of groceries for my sister to conjure into dinner. The police got Ed, I shouted. I held out the phone. She snatched it from me, dropping the bag. A tangerine rolled across the rug. I picked it up, the skin cold and rough. Ed, what's going on? But how can they make that sort of mistake? Don't shout at me, I'm just... No, I know, but I don't have the money for... Ed, stay calm. I'll call Karen. I said I'll call Karen. Stop shouting at me. Ed, for Christ's sake, I'm just not able to. Ed? She held the phone away from her ear and scowled like it had bitten her. The cops are charging him with murder, she said. I was 7. I didn't know what that meant. Did he owe someone money? We hadn't any cash to pay the electricity bill. My sneakers were so small they made the tips of my toes white. Can I call him back? I asked. The tangerine was still in my hand. I wanted to throw it in Mom's face and hurt her. No, she said, and don't expect to speak to him for a long time. I didn't believe her. I thought Ed would call. I thought he'd come home. But he never did. Slum landlord. Aunt Karen told me not to come here. She said Ed didn't deserve an entourage after the pain he'd caused our family. Even after 10 long years, she blames him for everything. She points to Ed and says, "See what he did to us?" And maybe she's right. Everything turned to shit when Ed got put away. Nothing worked anymore. So maybe this is a stupid idea. I'm already pining for home, Staten Island, anything that isn't Wakeling, Texas, in the broiling heat. It's not as if I want to be here, checking out some slummy apartment, but I can't afford to keep staying at the Wakeling Motor Stop Motel, not for the whole time in Texas anyway. $600 for the month, the landlord croaks, coughing up something wet and spitting it into a Kleenex. Judging by the dishes in the sink, the apartment hasn't been lived in for months, and he'd be lucky to get a dime for this whole roaches in the closets, rodents in the kitchen. I need it until mid-August. I'll give you $400, I say. He snorts. $500 cash. and I can tell by the way he's backing out of the apartment that it's as low as he'll go. Well, I guess he's the one with the keys. He can afford to play hardball. If I find out you're trouble, he said, I'll send my men round. You don't want to meet my men. But his men don't bother me. I've got bigger worries than getting bashed in with a baseball bat by his hired goons. I got Ed to worry about. Ed. So here I am, stuck. And it's going to be the worst time of my life, the worst time of everyone's lives, for those who get to live. Texts. In the parking lot of my motel, a gang of bikers are slugging booze from paper bags, hellfire rock music filling up the lot. As I pass them, my cell phone pings in my back pocket. I don't bother checking the message. I know it's Angela pestering me. Where are you? Did you go to the prison? You seen Ed? How's Ed? Karen's still seriously mad at you. Ed's new lawyer emailed. He seems smart. Where are you? I have to call my sister, and I will. Later. Right now I'm starving, and I have to get away from this music. Bob's Diner. The diner is all beat up outside, paint crumbling, half the neon sign unlit, and inside it's the same. Broken floor tiles, posters pale and torn. A middle-aged waitress in a pink bowling shirt smiles. Her name, Sue, is embroidered into her front pocket, the black thread unravelling itself, snaking down the shirt like a little vine. You okay, hun? She asks, raising her hand to her mouth, dragging on a cigarette right there behind the counter like it's totally normal, a waitress smoking in a restaurant, and it might be around here. I pull out my remaining cash and wave it at her. What would $4 buy me? I say. I guess you could get a bacon roll and a coffee. Would that work, hun? Great, I say, inhaling the tail of her cigarette smoke. She shouts my order through a swing door, turns back to slosh coffee into a stained mug and pushes it across the counter. It's thick and bitter, nothing like you get in New York, but I don't complain. I tear open some sugar, tip it in to disguise the taste. Any jobs going? I ask. Wait there, hun. Sue vanishes through the swing doors. I grab a muffin in plastic wrap from a basket on the counter, stuff it into my bag before a man appears. A thick moustache hiding his mouth, a belly that bulges over his waistband. He reaches across the counter, shakes my hand. I'm Bob, I believe you're looking for work. His accent is drawn out and totally Texan. Joe Moon, I say. He nods. I need a delivery guy, someone with a car, 'cause the junker out back won't run. Or someone real fast on a bike. The fast person would also need a bike. I fix cars, I say quickly. If I get it to go, could I have the job? Sue has reappeared, a fresh cigarette limp between her twiggy fingers. She spits bits of tobacco onto the floor. Just so's you know, hun, my boyfriend Len is good with motors. Even he couldn't get that crap heap to turn over. She uses a sour rag to wipe coffee stains from the countertop. I could try, I say, not wanting to sound too desperate. Okay, you can try, Bob says. He reaches into the basket and hands me a blueberry muffin. Dessert's on me, son, he says. No, sure. All last week, Reed tried to cheer me up. He tried to make me believe Ed would get off, that I'd be back in Arlington before the track and field holiday program began. I'll win bronze for steeplechase, you'll get a gold for 5,000 metres, then we'll go to the shore and show off our medals. We can stay at my cousin's beach house as long as we want. We'll get tans, spoke, hit on hot girls, so many hot girls at the shore. Sounds good, I said, knowing it was never going to happen, knowing I'd miss out on my entire summer, including the New York City track and field program. It was the one thing that had kept me going in school, knowing that at the end of the year, no matter how low my grades were, I'd have the program to prove I wasn't some layabout loser. But instead of running, I was coming to Texas to count down the days until my brother's execution. Trying to make me feel better about that was pointless. The second call. I liked cheese sandwiches with a truckload of ketchup and had a plate of them in my lap. I was watching Spider-Man on TV, cross-legged on the carpet, wearing scuffed-up sneakers, laces undone, feet sticky inside them. I was 8 by then, a year after that first call, which had turned everything inside out. Mom shouted at me, as she always did, "Turn the goddamn TV down!" She had her cell to her ear, was squinting like she was trying to see whatever it was she was being told, and then, like a rock into a river, she fell and began to howl. It wasn't like you see in movies, someone collapsing, but so beautiful and tragic. She was a person possessed, smashing into pieces, and I was afraid to get too close. "No!" she screamed. I knew right away the words she was hearing. Anyone could have guessed. We were kind of expecting it, and not expecting it at all. And Karen had been at some of the short trial. Aunt Karen had been at some of the short trial, came home and told us things weren't going Ed's way. For starters, there was his confession the day after he got arrested. She said that if she'd been on the jury, she'd have locked him up and thrown away the key herself. "He didn't do it," Angela told her. "I don't know anymore," Aunt Karen said. "He looked pretty guilty to me." And the day that second call came, I was the only other person home, alone again with Mom in the house, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, Mom was always freaking out, but not like that, an animal caught in wire. I went to her, tried to get her to stand, but she wouldn't. She couldn't. Mom stayed down for a really long time. Aunt Karen. 3 hours after the bad news, our Aunt Karen came to stay. "I'm all you've got," she told us. She stared at the ketchup stains on my white t-shirt, like that was proof our family couldn't take care of itself. I wiped my nose with the back of my hand and she flinched. "We don't have space," Angela explained. Aunt Karen scratched her nose with her thumbnail. "I'll take your room. You can share with Joe for a while. Ed's old bed is still in there." Angela stood up as tall as she could. "I need my privacy," she said. "Yeah, well," Mom mumbled, cradling a gin. "But I have exams," Angela tried again. "I know you do," Aunt Karen said, "and you'll pass them. I won't have you go down the same road as Ed." It didn't matter how hard we stamped our feet. Aunt Karen had made up her mind, and Mom was in no state to argue. Aunt Karen was staying, and we would start going to church, not just on Sundays, but after school too. TV was out, and Bible study was in. Karen knew how to save our souls from falling into the darkness that had carried off our brother, and the first part of her plan was to never mention Ed again. How Mom handled it. Mom stopped going out. She littered the house with empty pill bottles. She watched infomercials, shopped through the TV, said she was waiting until people forgot that she'd get her act together and go back to work once the worst blew over. But she never returned to work, and when she finally ventured out, she didn't come back. Auto shop. When I told Reed's uncle at the auto shop last week that I was headed to Texas for the whole summer, he didn't take it well either. "I don't know if I can keep your job open, Joe," he said. "I got guys queuing up to apprentice here, and you're taking off?" I hadn't explained to anyone apart from Reed the real reason I'd been gone. I was ashamed, and Reed must have guessed it. "Give him a break, Uncle Sammy. Joe's in trouble and needs to get out of Arlington before he gets in more trouble." Sammy rubbed his greasy hands against his blue overalls and frowned. "You're lying." "He's lying," I said, "but I gotta go. I'll be back though." Sammy sighed. Okay, you're a hell of a lot better than Reed at getting dirty under a hood anyway. I'll give you that." Sammy watched me. "You're still standing there, Joe. What do you want?" I didn't like to ask. It felt like begging. I'm owed 2 weekends." Reed snickered. Sam rolled his eyes and reached into his pocket and pulled out a roll of 20s. "How much?" Team wrong. Back at the motel, I call Angela. Her voice is high-pitched and something is buzzing in the background. "I can't hear you, Ange," I shout. The buzzing stops. "I'm at the bar making mojitos," she says. "You okay?" I want to tell the truth. I want to say, no, I'm not okay. It's hot. I haven't any more money for food. I'm solo doing this, which isn't how it should be. I'm 17 years old. Why aren't you here? Why isn't Aunt Karen here? Where's Mom? I found an apartment, I say, leaving out the bit about the bugs. Will the cash have cleared in my account yet? She coughs into the phone. Should have, she says. But then that's it. The boss won't give me an advance, so it'll be next month before I've got cash to come down there. Aunt Karen? I ask hopefully. No way. She's still cross. She picked up more stuff and she isn't moving back in. I don't even know how we'll make the rent unless she changes her mind. And how the hell are you gonna eat? I'm looking for work. I wish I could get more cash, Joe. I half laugh. How exactly? Ask strangers for handouts? We could never get away with that, begging for loans to be with our brother. See, we aren't the people anyone pities. No one cares whether or not we get to be with Ed at the end, how poor or how hungry we are. The cop's widow, though? If she set up a crowdfunding account to buy a black dress and a matching hat, you'd have people donating big time. The widow of a murdered guy? Do you take MasterCard? But we aren't her. We're not the victims here. Instead, we're on the other side of right, players for team wrong. Have you seen Ed? Angela whispers. I go to the bathroom, run cold water into the shower. No, I admit. I haven't even tried. Chicken. Ed wrote to me last month asking for help. I'm the one he thought he could rely on. He probably imagined his baby brother had grown into a man. But I'm too chicken to even call the prison and inquire about visits, let alone drag my sorry ass up to the gates and try to get in. Letter from Ed. Hey, Joe. How you doing, man? You best be studying hard or I'll kick your ass. Now, just playing. Thing is, I didn't write Angela this week. Tell her it's my bad, but I need you to break something to her. I got my date through. Guys here telling me it's nothing to panic about, just a date, but if I'm honest, it makes me rattle like old bones, 'cause it means they made up their minds and want to do me in. And for what? For nothing, for something I never did. The date they settled on is August 18th, Joe. But I got another appeal to go in the state courts before then, and we could go to federal for a couple more, I think. Also, there's a chance the governor will stop it, or the president. So, August 18th is what they're planning on. But if I convince them of the truth, it might come and go, and I'll still be standing, you know. Thing is, I got no lawyer to advise me and explain how everything works, 'cause the state don't pay for lawyers until eternity, right? Anyway, the prison's priest is doing some detective work and finding out what's what for me. Thing is, I'm wondering if you could come visit. Father Matthew says that even though you're not 18, they might let you come if Angela can't, on special request. I wrote the warden and I'm waiting to hear. In the 9 years I've been locked up in Wakeling, I've only seen him a handful of times on the row. No one comes down to see us deadbeats unless they have to, I guess. But he seems like a regular kind of guy, worth asking. Anyway, I'll mail this now and write again when I know more. Don't freak out, okay? Let me do the sweating. I got plenty of time for it. Be cool, little brother. Ed. What it meant. I got that letter 2 weeks ago, read it, then threw it on the floor. I couldn't touch it. Those words, what they meant, what I guessed they meant, 'cause even Ed didn't seem too sure. I was standing in my bedroom, and when I looked up, Angela was in the doorway, purse under her arm. She pointed at the rug, the letter lying face up, Ed's scrawl all over it. How is he? She asked. I wanted to tell her everything, but couldn't figure out what I knew. He's busy, I said, which was stupid. He's in prison. How busy can you get? Did he like my card? She smiled. He didn't mention it. But he did mention the execution date. He said I shouldn't worry, but for the first time in 10 years, Ed asked to see me, sort of said he needed me, which he'd never done before. He'd always known the deal with Karen, didn't want to mess up things for Angela or me in Arlington. You guys get on with your lives, he said in a letter once. So we tried. We tried really hard to pretend Ed was okay, that his death sentence was mythical and not something that would ever really happen. I closed my eyes, rubbed my face. What time did you get in last night? Angela asked. About 1, Karen snapped, appearing behind her. If you want to graduate next year, Jo, you have to study. Where were you? The year's almost over, Karen, I told her. I wasn't going to admit I was with Reed, figuring out how to cheat on our Spanish test the next day instead of just studying for it. I closed the door on both of them and picked up the letter. I read it again just to be sure, and I was. It was true. My only brother would be dead within 2 months, and there was nothing I could say or do to stop it. A decision. When I finally told Angela, she shook and twitched, wouldn't eat the eggs I'd scrambled. She said she'd go to the bank for a loan, get him a lawyer, said she wanted to go down to Wakeling to help. But then Aunt Karen got home from her night shift at the hospital and tried to shake sense into my sister. There's nothing you can do, and I won't have you wasting your money or your life fighting for someone who's not even sorry. Without a lawyer, he has no chance, Angela argued. That isn't our fault, Aunt Karen snapped back. He's my brother, but not a good one. I stood between them. I'm going to Wakeling, I announced, not knowing before the words were out whether or not I really wanted to see Ed. But someone has to be here. Angela's got a full-time job. Aunt Karen hates him, and no one knows where the hell Mom is. That was decided 2 weeks ago, and nothing's changed except one thing. Ed now has even less time to live.